Hello, everyone. Now I would like to start Agile Governance Update for day 2. Following on from the yesterday, we had this conference yesterday from Tokyo, and today we are having this meeting in Kyoto University. My name is Tatsuhiko Inatani from Kyoto University. And thank you very much for joining us today. Now, let's start this session 4, Agile Governance Update. In this session, we are going to talk about recent topic about Agile governance, focusing on the topics from last time and this time. And Dr. Hiroki Habuka is going to moderate this session. My name is Habuka from Kyoto University. Hello, everyone. In this session, the title is Agile Governance Update. The Agile Governance Symposium, the title of this symposium, this is to look at the overview of the Agile governance, and then we would like to talk about the specific items, EVPM and risk management and economic security. Many topics have been discussed since yesterday, but now why we put this title of Agile Governance, even though this includes so many different topics. The thing is we have to conduct practice Agile Governance while collaborating with each other. Now, starting from Yamashita-san, please introduce yourself. Thank you very much. My name is Yamashita from Kyoto University. I'm in charge of commercial law at law school. My specialty is insurance law and company law. In addition to that, at the AI and law unit, I am doing research on the Agile governance and AI-related laws. Thank you. From Mitsubishi Research Institute, my name is Kumiko Takahashi. I belong to Mitsubishi Research think tank. For government organizations, I give advice about how to introduce new technologies, and also in my research, I study about the risk management of new technologies. I also provide consultations to my clients. Thank you. Hello. From Airbnb, I am a lawyer, Yuichiro Watanabe. Dr. Habuka was doing research on Agile governance at METI, and I've been studying Agile governance together with Dr. Habuka. And I'm also a member of the working group of METI. The topic I'm going to talk about today is base registry. I'll talk about base registry in more detail later. At Digital Agency, Digital Foundation has made a big progress. And I'm going to share what I've learned from this research. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity. From Kyoto University Center for Interdisciplinary Legal Studies, my name is Kentaro Asai. I study about company finance and also behavioral economy and law and economy. I belong to legal study department, but my background is actually economics. I obtained degree from Chicago University. Before this position, I worked for Goldman Sachs and also IMF. After getting doctor's degrees, I belonged to Australian National University. My major activity, one of the major activity is the creating hypothesis and validation of hypothesis about the economy. I'm so excited about today's discussion. Thank you. Thank you very much. You have many different backgrounds. Some of you are from private companies and some of you are from academic and government control, internal control, or also you have many different background. And I intentionally invited people from different background because in practicing agile governance, implementing agile governance, we need knowledge or positions or perspective from many different background, private and public or companies or the insurance. All those things need to be combined. And that's what makes agile governance very difficult. We will spend 75 minutes to talk about agile governance from many different perspectives. And by analyzing it, ultimately, we would like to think about data-driven decision-making system, how we can implement such decision-making system. That's what we want to talk about today. And as the precondition of the discussion, I would like to give you the overview of agile governance. Some of you have already heard about agile governance, but this is not something many people are familiar with. The term agile is a very difficult term to understand. The original meaning of agile is very quick, and this term has drawn a lot of attention in the early 2000s because back then, in the area of software development, agile development approach was introduced. Agile development, this is not something the structure of the software is determined beforehand for the manufacturers to design it. This is the conventional IT development approach. Or if you look at a building or construction, you have plans beforehand because it would be difficult to change the plan afterwards. So that has been the conventional way of designing things. But when it comes to softwares, systems provided by many different parties are combined and codes are written so frequently, so it's difficult to have solid or established design from the beginning. Therefore, they introduced the approach of agile development. The key is that we try to develop a very small system and then they implement it and demonstrate it and learn from it. And based on that learning, we created we make improvement and make it bigger and bigger. And that process or that cycle is run every month or every week. And that approach is more appropriate to create a system which can adapt to many complicated environments. That's what the agile development is about in the context of software development. And that approach has drawn a lot of attention since 2000s. And the next term, governance. Governance is another very difficult word to understand. In Japanese, this is often called as control. But in the context of corporate governance, this can be also used in company management or in bigger context. Democratic system is often called governance. There is no right answer because all of them are part of governance. Originally, The original meaning of governance is about operating vessels. That's the original meaning. The Platon, in his book of Nation, he said the operation of the country was compared to the operation of the vessel or ships. So that's the origin of the word governance.
So that means that governance does not mean a single system. Overall, as a whole, how can we operate society in a good manner? So that is what the governance means. So in the broader sense, it's about the society or the constitution or the democracy, which is the basis of our society, or on a more implementation level, it can be regulations as a part of the governance. And furthermore, it can be translated into corporate governance for organization or a single system or a single service. On that level, it can be called system governance, IT governance, data governance, or AI governance. So fundamentally, we have to understand how can we better combine the governance at different levels in order to improve the overall well-being of the society. Of course, each person considers how to maximize his or her own interests, but from a public perspective, how can we better design the entire society or system for the entire society? So agile and governance, why is it that we are combining these two terms? Well, since yesterday we've been discussing this already, and many have touched upon this. The speed of changes in this society is so rapid, and our society is so complex. So with the traditional approach, we do not assume that the society will change so quickly. So those lawmakers elected in the election have a discussion and debates in the Diet and spending 2 to 3 years and come up with a law. And then this law has a lot of to-dos and don't-dos. And then corporate players follow and observe the laws. As long as they do, the entire society or the governance works. It's a very simplified way of looking at it. But then we live in a world that is so complex and the changes are so speedy. And so if we spend 2 to 3 years to formulate a law, the law will be very quickly obsolete. And then to-do list or don't do a list cannot be created because we have so many different solutions and risk scenarios. So the government or some industry associations, they cannot be the single player to come up with regulations. When they do that, the innovation that may emerge from the private sector can be completely destroyed. So I think that is a very fundamental discussion that is taking place. That's why we need to have an agile approach. So rather than coming up with complete regulations or rules, but as we operate those rules, we improve the accuracy of those rules gradually. So that's something we do. And of course, there are changes of society. So we also need to update our rules and regulations. And for that, what kind of processes need to be there? So rather than just setting up rules in advance, we need to have retrospective evaluation of those rules. And when there are certain mistakes and errors, there needs to be some kind of the compensation for that. So how can we do that? That is a challenge we need to address. So once again, I think all of us here today and everyone in the world will agree that there are challenges. But what about in terms of solutions? What kind of solutions can we come up with together? I think it's not just us, but those scholars and also corporate people as well as policymakers across the world are now trying to come up with best possible solutions. And as a specific agenda like economic security that was discussed yesterday, and evidence-based policymaking and risk approach, these are the important discussion points. So the moderator is not supposed to talk too much, but I think I have covered mostly the background of this topic of agile governance. Therefore, I'd like to now address those wonderful panelists to answer the following questions. So first and foremost, we already got some very brief introductions of each person. But in relation to agile governance, what kind of research are you doing and what kind of work are you engaged with? That is the first thing I would like to ask each one of the panelists. So starting from Asai-san. So what are you doing nowadays in terms of agile governance? Thank you very much, Habuka-san. First, what is governance? He just defined it. And governance is like the sailing vessel or a ship. And I totally agree with that. And I'm really impressed with his definition. And what I do and what I want to do going forward, let me talk about that. So society or organization or a company, when there is a problem, we need to come up with a prescription to address that issue. From the academic perspective, that's something I would like to do. So from the academics perspective, what can we do more specifically? At least I think there are three things we can do who are in the academia. Number one, ourselves or organization, societies, and companies, based on the problems that they have, we come up with hypotheses. And hypothesis is often formed in the sphere of science. So put it very simply, this policy may work. This policy may not work. So we predict the outcome and we make a proposal based on different theories as well as scientific papers or literatures. And especially when it comes to cognitive science and also economics as well as the company management, there are a lot of theories that have been accumulated every month. What are called top journals are publishing a lot of articles on those topics. Having said that, unfortunately, those articles and their findings that are carried by those articles are not completely rendered possible. So how can we make sure that those outcomes can actually benefit the society? So that's number one. The second one is hypotheses need to be tested. For instance, when there is a scandal by a company, how can we prevent the recurrence? There may be a solution, and we can do A/B testing or some kind of experiment that can be run by the company to test that solution. And if there's not enough time to do that, then we can come up with an evidence from the review of the previous literatures to measure whether a certain solution may work or not. So through the experimental the approach, we can actually test the hypothesis based on the past literature. So that's also possible. And thirdly, based on the result of the test, we have to be able to make a proposal for improving the government or improving the corporate value. So that's something we can do as academics. So talking about verification or testing, what can be obtained from there? What can be obtained is evidence. So what is evidence? Evidence is actually a separate, discrete thing. But eventually, the findings that can be obtained from the evidence, of course, all of them are very important, but they are just a discrete, a group of discrete things. So how can we connect the dots to draw a line? So we have to come up with a narrative in that regard. So that's something that academics can do and make contributions to. So more specifically, let me just talk about what I do and what kind of hypothesis testing and also the proposals we are making is that, well, currently I am interested in presenteeism. So presentism is the person trying to always go to the company to be present in the company. So under the COVID the pandemic, we promoted remote way of working, and then I think that wave has subsided, and remote work is being reversed, and now people are starting to go to the office once again. So this presenteeism, is it a good thing or not? I think it's quite a hot, important topic. And especially in the United States, under this current administration, the federal government officers are ordered to be present in the offices, and this has drawn a lot of discussion, and this is also relevant to Japanese companies.
So is presentism a good thing, or is it something we should deny? And that needs to be judged. And for that, we need testing or validation. If presentism is a good thing or a bad thing, we have to have hypothesis and test the hypothesis. Ideally, through experiment, we have to validate this hypothesis. But at one company, it's difficult to conduct such large-scale experiment. Of course, personally, I would be interested, but that would be very difficult. In a Chinese company, there is a well-known research, but the number of such experiments is very limited. And the same goes for the number of papers. So what we can do as a research, this is a natural experiment. That's what we can do. That's something we can draw from existing data. What that means is that in the US, depending on a state, they have paid leaves, paid sick leaves, or mandatory paid sick leaves. So some companies have presenteeism, and by using the difference of rules of each company or each state, we can compare the situation between different states with different rules. And I did an analysis according to this data, and in the evaluation of employees for the company was raised with this rule, and the number of violation of the rule was decreased. And now we are doing further experiments so that we can come up with the final conclusion. As I mentioned, analysis based on the data is very beneficial to learn from it so that we can get the put the things into the right direction. So that, I think, is a very important driver of agile governance. Of course, we have to listen to well-experienced people. Those opinions are valuable. But on the other hand, data is the accumulation or collective knowledge of many people. Sometimes that evidence is not very objective. However, I think it's worth trying to use that data because that's an accumulation of data. So that was my introduction of my research. Thank you very much. When it comes to rulemaking, we tend to decide particular way is better than the other way, but sometimes data shows us a very different answer, or the situation may be different depending on the region. So policymakers and companies who own data and academics like Asai-san should come together and utilize data wisely to create wise policies. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Yamashita from the standpoint of commercial law and insurance law. Please talk about governance, agile governance. Thank you. My name is Yamashita. As Asai-san mentioned, how academia can contribute to the society, I totally agree with you how we should make contribution. And in my research center, the aim of our center is to make contribution creating hypothesis and test the hypothesis, and based on that learning, we make proposal to the government. That's our agenda. And I'm hoping to make contribution in that regard. Recently, let me talk about what I'm doing. As Asai-san mentioned, the accumulation of experience or also collective knowledge based on data, he compared those two. Massive amount of data. What can we do with the massive amount of data? And I think insurance companies can make use of that big data. That's what I've been thinking. Recently, the society, as has been mentioned, the society is getting more and more complex, and we are seeing many changes. It's often called VUC. It's so VUCA, and it's a very unpredictable situation. In order to survive such society, what can we do? Of course, we would like to remove any kind of risks, but that's not an appropriate approach. And any efforts to reduce the risk to zero is too expensive and meaningless. Then what we can do is to control the risk and reduce the risk to a reasonable level. Or when risk arises, we should think about how we can manage that situation. That's what we call risk management. And that's also true for Agile governance. Agile governance is what to do with risk management. When we think about risk management, first we have to think about how to use insurance to get ready for any kind of risks. Using IT technologies or AI technologies, those things are developing fast recently. As insurance company, given this situation, need to obtain massive amount of data and analyze the data to draw conclusions. And that's what insurance companies can do now. And that findings can be reflected onto the insurance fees or clauses. And that way, the behavior of the insurers can be controlled, which will lead to the reduction of the overall risk of the society. In other words, insurance companies can become a body to control the risks of the society. Of course, insurance company traditionally has played such roles from the past. In Japan, one example would be voluntary car insurance. There is a grade of the insurance. If you have an accident, the insurance fee for the next year would go up. By having this system, drivers would try to reduce or avoid any kind of accidents. And here in this example, insurance companies are controlling the risk. But in a sense, this is a very simple way of doing things because the premium insurance holders would be just trying to be careful based on the fees that they have to pay. This approach may be beneficial to some extent, but with the advancement of the IT, they will be able to do much more sophisticated things. Recently, telemetrics insurance has been widely used. One of them is for car insurance. Terminal is put into each individual cars, and that terminal can collect data, and that data is transmitted to insurance company. Insurance company analyze that data, and they decide if that a driver is driving safely. If the driver is driving safely, the insurance fee will go down, and if the driver will driving violently, then the insurance fee will go up. And for further sophisticated idea would be to collect massive amount of information, and then on a real-time basis, they can set the insurance fee, or maybe they can change the clauses of the contract.
And that way, insurance holder will try and avoid risk behavior even further. So technologies have advanced, and the insurance company now acting as a kind of a regulatory body, and insurance products that can be used as regulatory tools, so that through such through tools, the overall societal risk can be reduced. At the same time, avoiding traffic accidents in the case of the cars and other types of accidents or damages that are being caused because of the accident can be reduced in both frequency as well as in value. So that would be quite desirable situation for the entire society. But then, as you can understand, insurance company collect GPS data, or if in the case of a life insurance, the insurance company obtain the vital data of insured person, and then they continue to collect such information on a continuous basis, and then that can probably violate privacy of the insured person. And in information processes, if AI is used in an inappropriate manner, this can cause a backlash on the part of the society. And I said that the insurance company can act as a kind of a regulatory body, but the insurance company is a private corporate regulating the citizens' behavior. Is that allowed for a private company? Is that legitimate for an insurance company to do that? And whether the direction that the insurance company is trying to move toward, is that the correct one or not? That has to be checked and monitored. So in terms of the Constitution, in terms of the Information Act, how could that be a problem or challenge in that regard? That has to be fully considered. And if an insurance company obtain a massive amount of data, and depending on the risk, the insurance premium or insurance terms and conditions may be changed. And this has something to do with the contract act, because on a real-time basis, usually insurance terms and conditions may not be changed. And as the insurance company has a massive amount of data, but according to the Insurance Act, we assume that the risk information is on the part of the insured person, not the insurance company. That's why the insured person is obliged to tell the insurance company a certain things about himself or herself, meaning that there may be a challenge there in relation to the Insurance Act. And going forward, I would like to deepen my research in this sphere, and with the cooperation of other researchers, we have started, or we are starting the joint research in this topic. So for these challenges, I would like to deepen my research going forward. So I haven't really come up with any solution because I'm just starting that research, but that's something I'm trying to do going forward. Thank you very much. It's very interesting. Telematics insurance and real-time insurance. these kind of scenarios may be very, very possible going forward. But when we have agile insurance service, what about governance? What about rules? What about risk management? All of these need to be always a check on the real time and to be updated on the real time. So, of course, I would love to go into more details, but then let's just move on to other panelists so that we have all the discussion points on the table. Now, Watanabe-san, please. Thank you very much. So, I am a counsel of a company. As such, I have really listened to two speakers' discussion points with much interest. And Dr. Asai's talk touched upon the labor law. And I belong to Airbnb. And in the United States, the company is bringing back all the employees to the offices. Well, not our company, but other companies. But engineers do not have to be there physically, but other staff members need to come back to the offices. But which is better? We don't know. We don't have any answer. So how can we establish a system in terms of agile governance with regard to such challenge? That's very interesting. So 60 days a year at Airbnb, you can actually work anywhere in the world, and your salary, your evaluation are not affected. But then I haven't myself been able to break away from the status quo myself. So that's why I'm very much interested in that. So agile governance and corporate legal affairs and also corporate decision making. So from the perspective of risk management, I think all of these topics are at the critical juncture. The insurance company's ecosystem is changing, and the corporate legal affairs as well as corporate governance, how are they going to be affected? I would love to learn about that in this session. So I'm wearing two hats. Last year or the year before, so I joined Airbnb in 2015. So this August marks 10 years anniversary. And back in 2015, when Airbnb came to Japan, back in 1948, there was a Hotel Business Act of Japan. And for over 70 years, there was no major update on that act. And there are a lot of people from Kyoto University, from overseas in this venue. And when I talk to overseas colleagues, they are really surprised to hear that for over 70 years, there hasn't been any change in the Hotel Business Act. Because this Hotel Business Act was created after the war under a very bad sanitary situation. So it's quite surprising. Therefore, rulemaking and risk management, whenever I talk about that, there is a lot to learn about. But then today I would like to talk about, in relation to agile governance, how data is being managed not just by a private corporation, but the central government. So Dr. Habu, could you please show my slide? And this is about the base registry. And are you familiar with this term, base registry? I'm asking the audience in this venue. Yes, I think most of you are not raising your hand, meaning that in this venue, Professor Inatani-san, who is one of the committee member at the digital agency, only he raised his hand. Please go to the next one. So based registry, what is it? So just looking at this slide on the screen, and today we have interpreters, and this is something that we do not expect the interpreters to interpret word by word. But then looking at that definition, you may be thinking that, wow, okay, so base registry means this, but it's not very clear. I don't think people would understand it. Therefore, I'd like to go to the next slide. So based registry, there has been a big update in 2024. So what is it? I would like to give you a very easy to follow explanation. And I think there are some high school students here. And then you become the third grader of the high school. And you are moving to a new address. And then there is a teacher A. You have to tell teacher A, your new address. So you have to update your address. And then there is teacher B, a club advisor. Like you go on a travel with the club members. So you need to give the emergency contact number. Therefore, you have to give this new address information to the teacher B, club advisor. Or there may be some high school students who may consider moving to a career. And then you have to tell this career guidance counselor the new address as well. So without base registry, each teacher is managing as a student roster in a separate manner. So that is the situation. Moving on to the next slide. So what is the base registry? If you look at this red portion, among the teachers of the school, we will create a common student roster. And that way, if a student moves to a new address, this information of the roster needs to be updated just once. And that way, teacher A, teacher B, teacher C all access this common roster to understand the new address of this student. Therefore, this student doesn't have to go through the pain of telling all of the teachers. And we do not have to have the situation whereby communication takes place between teacher A, teacher B, and teacher C.
But if you have a common roster of students, if you think about that, I think it makes it easier to understand what base registry is. Now, Dr. Inatani was the only person who was familiar with the base registry. So I think Dr. Inatani knows all the answers. But there are already 3 kinds of base registries in Japan, according to the documents from Digital Agency. What about you, the panelists? You are experts of Agile governance. Do you know the answers? What about the registration of the family register? No, that's not base registry. We are not acting. Dr. Asai, any idea? Real estate registration base registry. Thank you. I Googled. Now let's move on to the next slide. What I want to say here is when I talk about base registry, people often say that they would like to have it in the future. But in order to practice Agile governance as foundation of data, we already have 3 such things. The first thing is the corporate number site. For example, if you look for a smart company name, you can just search for the information of such company. This is the second example. Lawyers, I think, often use this. This is eGov. You can search for laws, and this is also a base registry. According to the past, it's more precise and also rich in terms of the information. It's updated more frequently than before. This is the third experience. Dr. Asai, I think you knew about this. This is EdiNet. EdiNet is one of the representative base registry. In my first year as a lawyer, EdiNet was available back then, and many different private companies structured and analyzed and provided data in this site. So EdiNet is about 10 years ago, in my first year as a lawyer, I used it. So this was the base registry, which has been 10 years old. Today we have audience from foreign countries. And I would like to talk about 2 big challenges Japanese base registry is facing. One of them is character collapse, and the second thing is the changes of the letters. When we create database, we face two problems, and the first thing is corrupted characters. This is my name, Watanabe, and this is Chinese character of my name. But there are many different kinds of Chinese characters for the same name, Watanabe. For those of you from non-Japanese speakers, the Nabe part of my name has many different kinds of Chinese characters. There are 15 or 20 kinds, different Chinese characters. And the problem here is in database A, it's displayed correctly. But if the data is transferred to a different system, the character is not shown properly, as you can see on this slide. For example, if we are to use base registry, and let's say we provide grant to all the Watanabe-san in Japan, you cannot extract all the Watanabe-sans in Japan properly. And in this example, this data is not usable. Let's go to the next slide. So in 2024, I will introduce the Nikkei newspaper article later. This is there are 700,000 Chinese characters managed by home registry vendors, and this is called MG Plus set. 70,000 Chinese characters is registered to this system. And by using this, the database was updated, and this process was completed to improve the database. And in January this year, this is an article from Nikkei newspaper. And as you can see here, 700,000 Chinese characters was reduced to 70,000 characters. It's not only about the reduction of the number of Chinese characters. Rather, the government took a lead to make this kind of update. You may not be aware of this kind of move because this is rather low key, but this was about how to display Chinese characters. And now let me talk about the variations of display. This is an address, the inconsistency of notation. And this is about the left side is Maihama City, Maihama 217, and at the right side it says Maihama City 211. And if you look at this, you may think those two places are the same, but actually they are two different places. And 211 at the left is the location of the Disney Ambassador Hotel. But if you look at the right side, Maihama City 211 is a very different things. It's nose to Disneyland. The address, there is no standard way to show address, including commercial registry. Even if you want to use that information in an agile manner, it won't be possible. If a machine try to read the data, the machine cannot differentiate those two different addresses. So that's another thing the government is trying to solve now. Now, in the future, maybe I'll be able to talk about the update next year in this conference, but I would like to talk about the improvement of 6 base registers. In Japan, related to agile governance, there are 6 base registers being developed. The first one is about text information, And the second one is licensing and approval matters. Example will be a food sanitation law. This kind of certification information is stored in many different places. But this base registry is for people to look for information related to any companies. And the third one and sixth one, they are similar but different. The third one is real estate registry. Real estate information, I think you are aware of real estate registry. If you try to get text information, the address and person's name are put in one same cell. And if you output the text, you wouldn't understand whose address it is or whose name it is. The quality of the data is very low. Therefore, the government is now trying to improve the data to activate or promote the sales or trade of the real estate. They're now trying to improve the base registry of real estate and also for address registry. When there are 20 different companies in one building, each floor information is not stored in the registry, or the name of the building is not registered in the registry. So if a parcel company try to deliver a parcel, even if it want to have 20 different address for 20 different companies in one building, it wouldn't be possible. So this is going to be a very big improvement if it's done properly.
And finally, legislation information and support information about benefits are being provided to which person and which not person. So these are the things that will be established from now on, next year and onward. So I wear two hats. The government committee member is one, and I just wanted to let you know this kind of consideration is now ongoing within the government. That is all from me. Thank you very much. Family register, why is it not a base registry? Well, I think I would like to look forward to the discussion in this session. So it's not a base registry right now. What are the problems that with the family register that cannot be considered a basic registry? So a family register now has text information, and also who is managing this in terms of real estate information. How to use it, that is a very important aspect. But family register with API to disclose such information to a company, that's not really something that can be envisioned. That's why family register is not considered base registry. So base registries are not complete within the government, but through API, those base registries need to be shared across the society. So if family register information is widely shared, it can be a problem. That's why it's not a base registry. So base registries are not just government database or having just a common their format, but it's rather a creation of the environment whereby everyone can access to such information. And for that, we need to have an enabling environment. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. Thank you very much. So as a last person, but not least, I would like to ask Takahashi-san. So from the academia perspective, what are the data-driven activities they are engaged with? And Watanabe-san said that what the central government is doing in terms of promote data-driven activities in Japan and also across the world. Therefore, I myself would like to talk about the following from the corporate perspective. In corporate activities, we can use the data in order to improve the accuracy of decision making. So that is something that is being done. And I don't think nobody disagree with the importance of that. But at the same time, as the concept, data-driven has been familiarized already. So data-driven is already a common concept across different companies. But when it comes to actual corporate activities, is it already realized? In certain areas, it's been advanced already, but then in terms of infrastructure type of corporations and the projects in those areas, I think we really need to do a lot more. There is a lot of room for improvement when it comes to data utilization. Before we reach that stage, how can we share the information that's being possessed by the company and improve the accuracy altogether? So first, we have to be able to share the data and then improve the accuracy of the data. But then the first step is sharing of the data. But then a lot of companies in Japan have not been able to overcome that first hurdle. And it has been discussed already, and it's because of the zero risk type of the preference on the part of the companies in Japan. So they do not want to see something unexpected by sharing the data outside of the entities of the company. So that is the kind of a zero risk the awareness on the part of the Japanese companies, and that is still considered an optimal action on the part of the company in Japan. For instance, infrastructure project companies, they have a lot of data on infrastructure which can be actually shared. By sharing such information outside of the entity. For instance, we have a lot of infrastructures that are being shared, and for maintenance of such infrastructure, it's better to understand what other infrastructure are existing underground. I think that would be very beneficial to improve the efficiency also. But in order to discuss that, we need to have sense of security, but then people do not trust sharing of the data. Data may be misused, or terrorism may occur by sharing such information. So such ultimate risk outcome is being envisaged. And because of that, they're not willing to have a discussion about sharing information. So that's something I see in Japanese companies. And of course, risk events need to be considered. But thinking just about ultimate risk events, and because of that, it's better to postpone this kind of discussion. Is that the correct approach? Because we never know whether those ultimate events will occur. And as risk scenario, is there a high probability or not? Or is there any trigger that can cause such event? Rather than analyzing the event's frequency, they are just considering ultimate risk event. And just because of that, they do not discuss information sharing. And they are narrowing down the scope of information that is being shared that can reduce the value, but then at the same time, risk can be reduced, and they are happy to do that. So that is often what is happening with the Japanese companies. And this kind of a decision-making mechanism is there among Japanese companies, and it's because of the decision-making style or process that is not there, comparing risk and benefit. Such processes and tools are being lacking, or they have not taken root within the company organizations in the majority of the cases. So when it comes to a new initiative or working together with other entities outside of the corporation, this is unprecedented for that company. And there are a lot of unknowns, and there are some unknown risks. And then, of course, it's difficult to evaluate such unknown risk. And as a result, they avoid making decisions altogether or narrowing down the scope of initiative. So that is a tendency on the part of the Japanese companies. And in many cases, they do not look at benefits. There may be a lot of benefits And a lot of times, those benefits are considered quite abstract and also just a qualitative manner. And that way, they can't have appropriate comparison between risk and benefit. And that's why they decided to go along with the status quo or choose a conclusion that has minimum risk altogether. So how can we break away from this kind of situation? That is today's topic. Agile governance is very much needed there because, as you know very well, and this has been already touched upon by other panelists, it is because with even incomplete information just existing, we need to come up with a system or a culture to still move ahead. I think that is very much needed to move ahead with the data-driven initiatives, and that will be made possible, rendered possible by Agile governance. And Agile governance processes have outer loops as well as inner loops. And Agile governance has necessary functions which are all essential functions. And when it comes to a comparison between risk and benefit to come up with a decision making, especially we need to have inner loops which are shared by the people who are closer to the ground. What is needed on the ground? That is being understood by the people on the ground. And we need to be able to come up with a decision making rather than postponing such a decision making based on the information that can be obtained from the ground. Although we may have just limited amount of information, with that information we have to be able to come up with a hypothesis and then try out in a small scale, in a small manner, and then make improvement. And that kind of a loop needs to be operated in a repeated manner. And we need to be able to come up with an organization that can endorse such inner loop. And from the academia perspective, it's very important to come up with a hypothesis and test the hypothesis. And I think that kind of initiative needs to be there within the companies and organizations. I think that is very much needed. So AI advancement is quite remarkable when it comes to decision making and comparison of benefit and risk. I think such processes can be replaced by AI. There is a lot of uncertainties, and it's just a qualitative, and it is a kind of a decision that doesn't have any precedence. We still need to be there. Human beings are still there. I think that role will continue.
And that kind of function or system needs to be in place in companies using agile governance. So that's what I want to learn from today's discussion. Thank you. The internal loop, that's PDCS cycle, which is run in the ground. An external loop is about how to have a feedback cycle, and if that feedback cycle is running properly, and if that problem is managed properly by the management. And that's called external loop in this field. Is my understanding correct? Yes, thank you very much for explaining. Now I would like to have a discussion, but only 12 minutes is left. I would like to have an interactive discussion here. You've talked about agile governance from different perspectives. If I am to summary your presentations, what you are fighting against? I think there are three things you are fighting against. One thing is governance based on imagination, risk scenario, or the possibility. If you want to try to come up with the idea, there are so many ideas. And based on the motivation, somebody may tell you certain direction is better, and that is the wrong governance. And some of you talked about zero risk governance. Governance is not about reducing the risk to zero. If you take that route, optimal approach will be taking no action. Then you'll be lagging behind in the world if you do not take any action. The third thing you are fighting against is in the unpredictable world, or the governance may be based on data, or maybe there is very strong entity owning the data, for example, a very big company, and those entity may be try to limit the behavior of certain people, or they may impose some beliefs to the people. That may be agile. However, for us, that's not an appropriate governance. That's what I saw from Yamashita-san's presentation. So those are the three things you are fighting against. Now, how can we fight against those three things? First, we need to collect data appropriately, and then based on cost-benefit analysis, we need to do governance. That may be the best approach. Having said that, that's very difficult. As Takahashi-san mentioned, ultimately, how can we obtain data? Or how can individual or companies should share the data? Or how can judge if certain data is trustworthy? And data is rather than an asset. This is fixed asset. This is constantly updated like blood. In that situation, how can we continue to obtain data? I think there are two kinds of data. The first kind is the data we can easily share, those data which doesn't have any risk to share with everybody. And if there is no such risk, it's better to make the data accessible to anyone. That's the idea of base registry. On the other hand, there are many data which we shouldn't share, like data about privacy or company secret data or trade secret data or data that may lead to terrorism attacks. Those data can be shared for good purposes, but otherwise it shouldn't be shared. Then data which is invisible, how and who should control it, and how we can make judgment about the appropriate use of the data. That's another difficult question we should answer. And in order to have good governance, when we think about how to use the data, we need to think about how to govern or how to control the data. This is a very complicated situation that we are facing. Asai-san, if you have any feedback or comments on what I just said. Thank you very much for a great summary, so I have nothing to add. But if I am to say something about your presentations, it was rich in information, so due to time limitation, I cannot say everything. But about Watanabe-san, I think my name, kanji character, might have been a problem. So that's only thing I can say. As I am an economist, I would like to talk about economic theory. So let me talk about economic theory. I think there is a very traditional economic theory problem lying here. About the data, this is a typical common assets problem. The incentive is low to share such asset with everybody else. That's one of the reasons why data is not often shared properly. We often talk about data-driven and it has high-tech image, but behind that, there is a very traditional problem lying behind. Now, how can we solve that problem? According to Takahashi-san's presentation, she talked about loops. As an economist, we have different kind of loop in mind. Data provider and governance people who use the data, those two are in collaborative relationship if they have this mind to collaborate with each other. But if one party is against the collaboration, then it wouldn't work. This is an issue called stag hunt game. This is another very traditional problem. In this situation, what is important is to show your willingness to collaborate. That kind of human thing, human aspect, may be very important. Thank you very much. So ultimately, human power or human attractiveness or human charm may be the key. And the relationship is traditional problem, I think is very important. In the world of AI, AI is basically an analytical machine. So that's an extension of what human being has always done. But when new services comes in, instead of thinking about it from zero, we should apply the old knowledge. I think that's a very important perspective when we conduct research. We have only 4 minutes left. Let's ask Yamashita-san. This is a good time to make summary of the session. Okay. Listening to your discussion, what I learned is zero risk governance is something we should absolutely avoid. I do research of commercial law, so as to corporate governance, appropriate level of risk-taking is inevitable for growth of companies. So you have to have governance which is capable of taking risks. That's what's being emphasized in corporate governance revolution. Not only in companies, but also it applies to overall Japanese society because we tend to avoid two risks. Now the question is how we learn to take risks, certain levels of risks. And the other thing I would like to say is Airbnb. I think you've broken existing regulations, and in order to do that, I think you analyzed a lot of risks. And I think you've convinced people who try to avoid risks.
And Takahashi-san, when you talk to companies, I'm sure you discussed that. So that's something I wanted to explore even further, but unfortunately the time is limited. So yes, these are the areas I took a lot of interest in, and I wanted to explore more. So that's all from me. Thank you. Watanabe-san, you're a genius to summarize everything in 2 minutes. So can you just give comments back to Yamashita-san? Well, Habuku-san, I think your programming itself has been agile. Thank you very much. I would like to say thanks to you on behalf of everyone here. As Yamashita-san pointed out, here in Japan, risk tolerance is quite low. Against this background, rather than saying you should take risks, I think we have to think about how to come up with an enabling environment to promote agile governance. Agile governance concept is spreading, and this means that people are starting to consider taking risks, and I think it's very important. And I'm sure that everyone is looking forward to what Takahashi-san would have to say. So I would like to end here. Thank you. Takahashi-san, please. Yes, thank you very much. So I have just 3 seconds. But anyway, so I think we have to share outcome and the processes of companies more. And I'm sure that that can be led by the people in the academia. Thank you. Thank you very much. You put together everything in 3 seconds. I'm sorry about my poor facilitation. I needed to rush you to wrap up. But anyhow, you really went deep into your topic. Thank you very much. And the good news is that it's not the last session. So in the follow-up sessions, we'll be discussing more about agile governance based on more concrete examples. And one of the themes is human-robot interaction. Japan may be running ahead of other countries. So I do hope that you will continue to take interest in this symposium, being here or present online. So this concludes session 4. Thank you very much.